have a limited time in many areas of concern. We'll keep this conversation moving at a steady pace. We know you're a busy person, but it is possible that we're going to ask one or two hard questions, and we hope you'll be able to give them adequate time. Okay? So do you agree?
Sure, fine.
All right.
Excuse me.
So, one of the first issues at hand was emergency preparedness. This weekend, I'm sure you're familiar with the disaster in the village, Sinatra, in the 300 Colville apartments where we had no power. We are just curious as to why there is no emergency infrastructure set up in case of emergency. We do understand that it was a natural disaster and it was a very unfortunate event, but we feel as though there should have been some type of system already prepared in case students, this does happen because students are out of electricity, food went bad in apartments, we had nowhere to sleep because there was a limited amount of space and we still left there where students were asked to go. It was just very unfortunate. And we want to know, are you making the steps to change that, or is there an emergency procedure?
Okay, I'm going to stand up so everyone can hear me and see me. First of all, I want to introduce some folks in the back, a folk in the back. Karen Pennington, who is the Vice President for Student Development and Campus Life. I hope you all know her because she is in charge of the division that looks after a lot of things that have to do with student life. So first of all, let me say that there is a very highly developed emergency plan on campus. It is a plan that has been put into effect on many occasions for many, many reasons. This Saturday, the meteorologists got it wrong, but beyond that, the things that happened with the power grid in the Northeast were really beyond anyone's control. I'm sure you all read the newspapers and you know there are still at least 1 million people without power. 1 million people. At one point there were millions of people without power. Transformers blew, lines came down, trees fell on things, and the power grid was massively affected. Our provider, PSE&G, did a fabulous job, I think, trying to correct the situation, but there is no way that they could have gotten it all done. There's no way they're going to know which transformers are going to blow. There's no way we could know that. And there's no way you can have a whole total emergency power system that in case anything happens with the power grid. We have emergency generators in the very sensitive places on campus. For example, in the buildings, the science buildings where scientists are doing experiments, and if the power goes out and the building gets too hot or too cold, it could destroy all the scientific experiments that the students and the faculty are doing in that building. We have backup generators for the IT infrastructure so that we can not have all the systems go down in a power situation. But every building on this campus can't have emergency power generators and backup plans for everything that is ever going to happen. It's just not possible. There was an emergency plan. We dealt with all the issues that arose, and as a matter of fact, Vice President Pennington could probably say more about this in more detail, but I know for a fact that students were offered rooms in other dorm rooms that we had empty because we were doing some renovations or because we didn't fill those dorm rooms this term. So in Webster, Stone, other places, we did not run out of rooms for people who wanted those spaces. And we also provided food for people, and anything that a student needed, they were given a place to call and they would have been taken care of. No one was left destitute and unserved. There were plenty of services for students, but there was no way we could anticipate that all of this was going to happen. And even had we anticipated, there was probably little we could have done about it. I mean, you just don't know. This was a very freak storm that happened. And I think it's terrific that the campus got through it well. There was not that much disruption. People were uncomfortable for a few days, but life goes on. There are a lot of people out there that still don't have power in their houses. They're dealing with it. There are a lot of people working for you every day in this university who are going home to cold, dark houses without refrigeration, without heat, without everything, and dealing with it and getting up and coming to work to do what they need to do here the next day. So it was unfortunate. I'm sorry if anybody was discomforted, but I think life happens like that sometime, and fortunately nobody was hurt.
I do agree, it was very unfortunate, and we cannot anticipate. I think everyone underestimated the seriousness of that storm. But what I find it hard to understand is why no one came to check on us. Why we didn't receive emails as frequent as I would like to receive them, because we're all left out in the dark. We don't know what's going on. We got one email Saturday night, well, two. We got one telling us to stay off the elevators and another saying that we can go to Stone and there'll be shuttles for us. But we were pretty much literally left in the dark. We got 6 meals, I do believe. We got 4 on Monday and 2 on Tuesday. But what about all of the many people, students whose food went bad in the refrigerator? After Tuesday, those swipes expired. Can we still use them? The impression that I got from the email was you only have 4 swipes on Monday and 2 on Tuesday. I just don't understand how
Vice President Pennington, do you want to provide more detail?
Sure. I'll come up that way, you don't have to.
Yeah, why don't you come up this way?
We only have about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
Well, I'll give you 4 minutes worth of an answer. You know, there's a couple of things. One is we tried to communicate as quickly as we could. A lot of people were running around doing a lot of things, like, as President said, because it wasn't anticipated, we didn't have Stone and Webster ready. So, and Blanton was also prepared, so we had to go through, we had to check that toilets were working, we had to get heat going, we had to make sure that lights were going. So a lot of the staff that was involved and perhaps that would have been sending additional emails were busy preparing those spaces for students to have the opportunity to be in them. In terms of food, we did provide meals, but if you look at your contracts, we're not responsible for loss of items. So that's why we strongly encourage students every year to get insurance, to get renter's insurance. We encourage students, and we talk about this when you're checking in, about your homeowners, your parents' homeowners policies, which oftentimes will cover losses such as this. But we also did offer swipes for the rest of the week to students without meal plans, and we did that as a courtesy. So those are there, you received emails, those students who were in those situations received emails, because a lot of students are already on meal plans in the village and the other facilities, so they may have just directed them to those students without meal plans.
Moderator, may I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I feel like the scale of the storm was unanticipated, because just to compare to Hurricane Irene, we saw it coming for weeks ahead of time. So there was a lot of time to set up additional measures, whereas this storm came pretty much a day or two in advance. There wasn't a whole lot of preparedness.
And it came when they said it was going to rain, if you remember, they said it was going to rain all day. It wasn't going to start snowing until late in the day, and the snow wouldn't start sticking until around 7 p.m. We know it started snowing in the morning, and by 11 o'clock, we were inundated. So it was very difficult.
Can I just
Sorry.
comment? My real concern of all of this, that's even more of a concern, is that there's a lot of emails and a lot of cell phones. What if the emails don't come through because of the electricity or the phones? Should there be implementation of maybe residents to control when the faculty is really busy? Because as I was under the impression from some of the students, they were many hours without any information. So, you know, yes, you can send a lot of emails and a lot of cell phones and a lot of text, but let's just be honest here, when the power grid goes completely out.
We did have student staff, and unfortunately it was also homecoming, if you remember, so a lot of students were involved in the homecoming activities, so some of the staff weren't around. in the buildings at the time some of this was happening. We had to wait for them to come back.
Right.
But the procedure is, when the staff is in the building, they do go room to room, they go floor to floor to try to deal with things. In the village particularly, I will tell you that, well, because you're adults and because alcohol is allowed in the village for those who are 21, people use Saturday and homecoming as an opportunity to party. Good for them. I hope they had a great time. But we also had a number of problems because people didn't have anything else to do without electricity. So the staff was also dealing with a number of issues that limited their ability to do some of this communication.
Right.
You know, let me just make a comment about this. I appreciate that everybody wants to feel comfortable and safe all the time. I really do get that. But as Vice President Pennington said, we do regard students as adults. You come to the university, you're taking on another phase of your life. And I think that it's really important to begin getting in a mindset where if something has gone wrong, instead of wondering who's going to come to help you with it, to begin thinking, all right, what should I do in this circumstance? How do I help? What could I do that would provide kind of a better situation or a better outcome to whatever is happening? And more, as you progress from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, as you are in the institution, we expect more and more that that's kind of the attitude that you'll bring to this situation, because that's what you're going to have to bring to the world outside the university when you leave. I mean, there isn't going to be a residence life staff to come and help in your room and take care of your refrigerator and tell you where to go and what to do. So I agree that we should do everything we can to keep you as safe and as comfortable as possible. But it being the real world, we're not always going to be able to do that. And I hope that you will begin thinking about ways in which we can maybe help you get better prepared to address some of these surprising circumstances in a way that you feel more confident to deal with them.
Okay. Time has elapsed, so does everyone agree that we should continue this topic, or should we move on?
I'd like to move on.
It's not even a question. I think that just the real concern is in the real world, when you're being self-sustaining, you pay for your own things, whereas we're paying to go to this school, and for those of the students who live on campus, I think they're paying for a certain level of protection, whereas people who pay for their own way in apartments and stuff, they are more willing to be able to deal with these issues because they don't have someone housing them, you know?
Yes, but you know, it's not that different, because you come to if you're living on campus, you're basically paying rent to the university for the room. If you lived in an apartment off campus, you'd be paying rent, and you could be out of power right now for a week. And your landlord wouldn't be taking any responsibility for it at all. Or if you lived in your own house, as a lot of the people who come to school here do, or a lot of people who work here do, they're in a situation where they have to deal with all of this. Now, I'm not saying I want you to deal with it. I want the power to stay on for you. I don't want it to go off. But I'm just saying that sometimes we have to keep things in perspective and be okay, go a little bit with the flow, because you know, nobody's being hurt, we're dealing with it, and we're going to be a little uncomfortable, but it'll be all right tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. We can cope with it, and if the person down the hall needs our help, maybe we could help them. It's just a thought.
We're gonna move on to the next topic.
Okay?
Whoever wants to.
So, Dr. Cole, I've done a little bit of research on parking on campus, and I was wondering, or not just me, many of us were wondering, why...
By the way, what's your name?
Mr. Tuttle.
Say it again?
Mr. Tuttle.
Mr. Tuck.
Yeah.
Okay. And what year are you in?
I'm a sophomore here studying history.
History. Thank you.
And I was wondering, or sorry, we were wondering, why isn't parking included in our tuition?
The one major reason why it is